Let me tell you how I unalived the same man 900 times. His name was Victor Kane, the Ash King, the Butcher of Meridian. Final boss of Terminus, the apocalypse game that stayed unbeaten for 11 straight years while streamers cried, guilds disbanded, and one Finnish speedrunner reportedly moved to a monastery. And me? June, 29, night shift warehouse picker, 4 dead keyboards, 1 deeply concerned mother. At 4 a.m. on a Tuesday, I baited the third flame wave, waited for the geothermal vent, and put my blade through the crack in his burning chest, on attempt 901. The screen went white. You are the first soul to reach the end of Terminus. The world thanks you. The world fears you. I was sitting in the dark crying over a video game like an absolute champion when one more window popped up. New game plus available. The throne of Ash sits empty. Will you inherit it? Warning. You may not return until the game is complete. Now a person with a functioning survival instinct reads, "You may not return," and closes the laptop. But I had just spent 11 years proving I don't have one of those. Secret ending, I thought. Bonus content, I thought. I clicked yes with the confidence of a man ordering a second energy drink at midnight. The room folded in half. So did I. Chapter 1. Wrong body, wrong team. Excellent bank account. I woke up in a bed the size of my old apartment, in silk sheets worth more than my old apartment, with a headache that could unalive a horse, black marble ceiling, floor-to-ceiling windows, and outside, Meridian City, alive. Neon, traffic, airships doing ad loops over the harbor. I'd seen this skyline exactly once, in the opening cinematic, right before the sky tears open and the whole map goes to hell. Meridian City, before the fall. I stumbled to the mirror, and the mirror committed a hate crime. Staring back at me was a tall man in his mid-30s, sharp gray eyes. A jaw you could open bottles on. A faint burn scar across one collarbone. I knew this face better than my own. I had personally stabbed this face 900 times. I was Victor Kane, the final boss, 10 years early. Ding. 21 days. I sat on the edge of the bed and did the math out loud like a lunatic. In 21 days, the star Erebos cracks apart in orbit and the red tide falls. 40% of humanity turns into husks in week 1. The grid dies. The oceans go dark. Then the beasts. Then the cores. Then the factions. Then 10 years of the worst content patch in human history. And I knew every event. Every hidden cache. Every named character's stat sheet, backstory, and death flag. I was, without exaggeration, the single most informed human being on this server. I was also wearing the face that every hero, faction, and half-feral raid party in the future would team up to delete. In the original plot, Victor Kane hoards, enslaves, and rules from a burning throne until year 10, when the Child of Destiny finally storms his tower and cancels his subscription to living. I knew, because I'm the one who did the canceling. So the system gave me the villain route, I muttered at the most hated face in Meridian, and a 3-week deadline. Then I did the one thing nobody in this city would ever expect from Victor Kane. I grinned like an idiot. Because the villain route comes with the villain's black card. Chapter 2. The butler chose the wrong chairman. There was a knock, and an elderly butler glided in with a silver tray. Silver hair, immaculate gloves, posture like a lamppost. Your morning coffee, chairman. I glanced up out of habit, and insight did its job. Albrecht Voss Meyer, 61. Head butler. Loyalty, 4%. Current activity, administering slow-acting thallium compound. Employer of record, Director Roth. Man. Day 1. I hadn't even brushed my teeth and the staff was already seasoning my drinks. The apocalypse was in 3 weeks, and this household was speedrunning it. Here's the thing. The original Kane knew he was being poisoned, and had been quietly building an immunity while pretending not to notice, because that's the kind of psychotic chess this man played against his own kitchen. 12 players ever found that lore document. I was one of them. The antidote regimen was in the 3rd drawer of the study desk, behind the false panel, but knowing is boring. Theater is better. I accepted the cup, swirled it, inhaled like a sommelier, and held it back out. Albrecht, 30 years of service. Share a cup with me. The lamppost developed a slight lean. Chairman, I couldn't possibly, I insist. I smiled. Kane's face cannot do warmth, it's not in the drivers, so what came out was something that made the room temperature drop. Consider it a promotion. The old man stared at the cup like it owed him money. A single bead of sweat performed a speed run down his temple. Inside, His thoughts were screaming loud enough that I didn't even need mind reading. He knows. Heavens, he knows. When did he? 30 seconds of the loudest silence ever recorded later. Albrecht set the tray down with shaking hands and bowed his head. I will fetch a fresh pot, Chairman. Fetch your resignation while you're at it. He froze at the door. And Albrecht? Tell Director Roth the chairman said the blend was weak. He should send something stronger. The door closed very, very quietly. I poured the coffee into a potted orchid, which I assume was also on Roth's payroll, and opened my map. The whole world unfolded. Every future dungeon, every buried cache, every hidden S-rank talent currently living their NPC life, with no idea they were 3 weeks from becoming a main character. Gold markers everywhere, like the world's most spoiler-heavy strategy guide. Ding. Public reputation among household staff. Terror rising. This counts as an improvement. Even the system was roasting me. But first, I had to deal with the woman who had been standing in the corner of the room the entire time. Chapter 3. The knife in the corner. Yes, the entire time. Coffee scene included. She stood in the shadow between the bookshelf and the window like the architecture grew her. Compact. Black tactical suit. Eyes like a closed door. The original Kane's personal shadow. The household called her the chairman's knife. Sarah Voss, 27. Combat rating, S-. Role, bodyguard/cleaner. Compliance enforced via hostage, sister, Mina Voss, held at Kane Biotech Lab 9. Fate flag, defector. In the original plot, Defects in Year 3 delivers the killing intel for the final raid. I nearly choked. Every Terminus player knows Sarah Voss, the recruitable assassin, the fan favorite. The apex predator whose loyalty quest made grown streamers cry on camera. In the game you meet her in Year 3, half dead in a drainage canal after she burns Kane's operation down from the inside, and her entire character arc is one long scream of hatred at the man whose body I was currently borrowing. The man who took her little sister and used her as a leash. In the original plot, that leash holds 3 years. Then it snaps, and the snap eventually deletes the Ash King from the server. I looked at the loyalty number, 12%. In this house, that apparently qualified as Employee of the Month. Get the car, I said. We're going to Lab 9. Something flickered across the closed door of her face. Not hope. People like her had that surgically removed. More like a threat assessment. Lab 9 is restricted. I own it. It's restricted from other people. I shrugged on a coat worth a compact car. Move. The drive was 40 minutes of weaponized silence. She drove like the car had insulted her. I passed the time reading status windows on pedestrians, because Insight doesn't have an off switch, and learned that the hot dog vendor on 9th Street had a hidden A-rank talent for spatial mathematics, and that a nearby traffic cop was fated to become a raid boss, called the Sorrow of the 9th Precinct. Noted. Moving on. Lab 9 was 4 stories of underground white tile and bad decisions. The staff practically folded in half when the chairman walked in unannounced. And in Observation Room C, hooked to monitors, was a girl of about 19 with Sarah's exact eyes and none of her armor. Research designation, Subject M, anomalous cell regeneration. Fate flag, in the original plot does not survive Year 1. That last line I kept to myself. Discharge her, I told the lab director, a sweaty man whose loyalty read 31% and whose search history read worse. Full records transfer, private ward at St. Aldrich's under Dr. Elias Ward, effective today. The lab director made the fatal mistake of opening his mouth. But Director Roth's standing orders. The room went quiet. Every technician within earshot had the same thought at the same time. This fat fool is about to be torn into 8 pieces. I tilted my head, and Kane's face did the thing it was built for. The temperature dropped 11 degrees. Do you work for Roth? Or do you work for the man whose name is on the building? Smack. That was the sound of a clipboard hitting the floor as the director bowed at a speed that risked lumbar injury. Paperwork has never moved faster in recorded history. In the corridor, Sarah stood frozen, watching orderlies wheel her sister toward daylight for the first time in 4 years. Her hands that had logged a double-digit number of people out of the server, were shaking. Your contract is void, I said, not looking at her, because 3 playthroughs of her loyalty quest had taught me that eye contact right now would get me stabbed on principle. The leash is gone. Walk out that door and I won't send anyone. Or stay, paid, triple rate, and in 3 weeks you'll understand why I need the best knife in Meridian standing next to me. Then, in a voice like a blade being drawn 1 centimeter, what happens in 3 weeks? The end of the world. I said pleasantly, and walked off to sign more paperwork. Ding! Note, subject is now 70% convinced you have brain damage. This is an improvement. That evening she stood in my study doorway for a full minute, watching me eat instant noodles at a desk worth more than a house, and finally said, "You are not him." "Nope," I said, slurping. "I'm the upgrade. DLC included." She didn't smile, but she didn't leave either. And from that day on, the woman who terrified the entire underworld of Meridian started standing half a step closer, glaring at anyone whose loyalty window I frowned at, like a knife that had decided, provisionally, at triple rate, that it liked its new owner. Chapter 4: Selling the Empire for Beans. 2 days later, the board of Kane Continental gathered for an emergency meeting, and I walked into 22 of the least loyal status windows ever assembled. Average loyalty in the room, 9%. One vice director's window just read, "Actively shorting your stock." Another read, "Sold the Q3 roadmap to Bray Holdings for a boat. Corporate." At the far end sat Director Roth. Silver temples, tailored charcoal, the smile of a man who had already rehearsed the eulogy. His window was a novel, Loyalty, 2%. Current projects, Chairman's incapacitation, medical route, asset transfer via Marlowe engagement, schematic sale to Bray Holdings pending. In the original plot, this two-faced snake survives the fall, runs the labor pens under Kane, and gets unalived in year 6 by a riot he caused. Genuinely a top 5 worst human in the entire game. I once spent a week on the forums arguing about it. I won. Next to him sat Celeste Marlowe, the fiancée. Old money, engagement arranged by 2 accounting departments. Her window was short and efficient, affection toward you, 0%, currently coordinating with Roth. Believes you will be declared unfit within the month. I took the head seat, steepled my fingers like the villain I legally was, and said, "Effective today, Kane Continental liquidates its telecom, media, and finance divisions, everything. Converted to cash and physical goods within 14 days. Boom. The room detonated. Grown men in 10,000 credit suits started making the sounds of stepped-on power cables. Roth raised a hand for calm, wearing his most concerned face. "Chairman? Those divisions are the crown of this company. Liquidating at speed means selling at a discount of 30, 40%. 45, I said. I've run the numbers. Bray Holdings will lowball us by Friday, because Augustus Bray thinks I've lost my mind, and Augustus Bray never misses a chance to eat a wounded rival." Silence. Somewhere down the table, a director quietly closed the trading app on his phone. "And what?" Roth asked delicately. "Will the company be buying with this war chest?" I slid the procurement list down the table, and the board read it in funeral silence. Grain, water purification plants, diesel and the depots that store it, antibiotics in small war quantities, seeds, salt, industrial greenhouses, batteries, 2 decommissioned power barges. And item 1 circled, the Helios Arcology, the bankrupt 200-story skeleton on the harbor ridge that had been a municipal embarrassment for 6 years. "You're buying?" "The spire of debt," someone whispered. "I'm buying the future," I said, technically the most honest sentence ever spoken in that boardroom. At 6 cents on the credit. Roth's smile finally cracked at one corner. "Not over the money. A man planning to have you declared insane hates nothing more than watching you do his work for him with this much enthusiasm." Meanwhile, that evening, at the top of Bray Tower, Augustus Bray watched the news with a brandy in hand and the face of a crocodile that had found an unlocked petting zoo. "Kane dumps empire, buys beans," ran the ticker. A late-night host did 8 minutes on the chairman of canned goods. Kane Continental's stock cratered. Bray Holdings soared. Poor Victor, Bray thought, swirling his glass. The pressure finally broke him. "I'll pick his bones clean by autumn, and in 10 years no one will remember the Kane name. Sir, in 18 days, 1 share of your company will not buy a can of my noodles. But please, keep the confidence. It ages beautifully." Chapter 5. Breaking up at a gala, as the genre demands. The Marlowe Foundation's Autumn Gala was the kind of event where the chandeliers have bodyguards. Every melon-eating elite in Meridian was in attendance, which was exactly why I went. A face slap without an audience is just a private disagreement. By the fountain, Celeste was performing for a circle of heiresses. Of course I worry about Victor. Stress does terrible things to a man's judgment. The family is consulting specialists. Translation, for those who don't speak socialite, the unfit to manage assets paperwork was already drafted, and Roth's pet psychiatrist signs it Tuesday. I strolled up, kissed her hand like a gentleman, and said, at a volume calibrated to reach every champagne glass in a 9-meter radius, Celeste, good news. I'm releasing you from the engagement. The string quartet stopped mid-note. A waiter froze and let a glass overflow. 200 of the city's finest melon eaters turned as one, ears growing 3 sizes. Celeste's smile held like a dam in a disaster movie. Darling, you're tired? Exhausted, I agreed cheerfully. Coordinating with Director Roth must be draining for you too. Tuesdays, Ambassador Hotel, Suite 1204, booked under his assistant's name. You two should really vary the schedule. My auditors got bored following it. The sound went through the crowd like wind through wheat. Old man Marlowe turned a color not found in nature. Somewhere in the back, an heiress whispered, Suite 1204, into her phone with the urgency of a war correspondent. Celeste's eyes flooded on command, the classic White Lotus opening, tears at the ready, voice pitched to Carrie. Victor, how can you humiliate me like this in front of... I leaned in and delivered the quiet part just for her. The insider packets you've been feeding Bray Holdings are time-stamped, notarized, and sitting with 3 law firms. Contest the broken engagement and they ship. Enjoy the gala, her tears shut off like a faucet. Behind those pretty eyes, I could practically hear the abacus catching fire as she did the math on her entire life. I snagged a canapé on the way out and gave the paparazzi my best villain smile at the door. More importantly, knife number 2, removed from my back. Roth was now down his medical route, his asset route, and his marriage route, which left exactly one play, the violent one. I knew this. I was counting on it. A trap works best when the rat has only one corridor. Chapter 6, Staffing the Arc. You can't run an arc with one assassin and a bad reputation, so I went recruiting with the most broken cheat in the game. I already knew who everyone becomes. Recruit 1, the Saint. In a leaking free clinic on the East Docks, a young doctor named Elias Ward was setting a fisherman's arm at 2 a.m, 3 years after Kane Biotech blacklisted him for reporting a falsified trial. In the original plot, this man becomes the Saint of the Vanguard, the healer whose triage doctrine saves 100,000 lives, whose death in Year 9 nearly wipes the final raid. Every player's favorite character. I own the figurine. The butcher of Meridian walking into his clinic went over about as well as expected. He pointed at the door with a splint. So I put a signed charter on the table, a fully funded 500-bed hospital inside the Helios Arcology, unlimited procurement, 0 interference. And... this is the part that made the splint stop. A public, notarized reversal of his blacklisting, with the falsified trial data attached. Why, Elias said flatly, would you build a hospital in an empty tower? Because it won't be empty long. I was already at the door. Stock trauma supplies first, burns and lacerations. You'll understand the ratio in 17 days. Elias Ward, loyalty, 0%, 41%. Note, he is coming for the equipment, not for you. Take what you can get. Recruit 2, the quartermaster. At Intake Warehouse 7, a procurement clerk was trying to bribe a trucker named Dobbs into signing for a grain shipment 10 tons light. Dobbs, round, sunburned, built like a friendly boulder, refused, got threatened, refused louder. Loyalty, 88% to whoever pays him honestly. Talent, logistics A rank. Fate flag, in the original plot, dies in Year 1 defending a food convoy that wasn't even his. I fired the clerk on the spot and promoted Dobbs to chief of logistics in front of 40 stunned dock workers. With a budget carrying so many zeros, the man had to sit down on a pallet. Is this a prank show? Dobbs asked the sky. Am I on a prank show? Recruits 3 through 300. A retired water engineer flagged S rank in purification. 200 laid-off construction workers at triple wage, no questions. A seed bank curator. A locksmith whose talent window just read, worryingly good. One by one, the Future's main cast got quietly payrolled by the Future's final boss, and not one of them knew what team they just joined. And every night, Sarah stood in the corner of the study, watching me mark evacuation routes for a disaster that hadn't happened, and her loyalty window ticked up 1 confused percent at a time, while her face said what the whole city was thinking. What is wrong with this man? 18 days became 12. 12 became 9. On day 8, the auroras started. Vast red curtains over the harbor, so beautiful that people threw rooftop parties under them. The news called it a solar storm. The birds began leaving the city in rivers. I watched the sky from the Arcology's unfinished crown, and for the first time since I clicked yes, I wasn't smiling. I'd seen this cinematic before. Before the world ended, there was one errand I refused to skip. Deep under the old Deep Line subway, level B7, my completion map held a gold marker every lore hunter knows, Fragment 0. 30 years before the fall, a pebble-sized splinter of Erebos hit the planet early. A government lab dug it up, failed to understand it, and buried it in concrete along with everyone's careers. Inside that lab, in a containment sphere, slept a dormant proto-core the game calls the First Ember. In the original plot, Victor Kane finds it in year 2. It's the origin of everything. The Cinder Authority, the Burning Body, the whole Ash King starter kit. The villain's most important power-up, sitting unguarded, 3 weeks early. I would like it now, please. Consider it stealing my own plot armor. From myself, legally. I took only Sarah. The service elevator dropped us into a tunnel older than both our bodies, lit emergency red, guarded by a security system that was somehow still alive. Automated turrets, decades old. Sarah dismantled the first one with a thrown knife through its sensor from a distance that made me quietly re-rate her from S- to. Extremely glad she likes me now. The containment lab was a cathedral of dead monitors around one intact sphere. Inside hung a crystal the size of a plum, matte black, one vein of ember orange crawling through it like a slow heartbeat. There was also, unfortunately, the lab's final researcher. Still at his desk, still moving. 30 years of exposure had done to him what the red tide would soon do to millions. The thing rose from the chair with too many joints, gray-skinned, eyes like blown fuses, and let out the exact husk shriek that 11 years of headphones had burned into my soul. "Don't let it scratch you," I said, and to my own surprise, my voice didn't shake. 900 deaths of muscle memory, even in a body that never earned it, is worth something. The fight was short and ugly. The husk was a pre-fall prototype, slower than the real thing. Sarah opened its tendons in 2 passes, and I finished, with a fire axe and more spirit than technique, what the researcher's family should have been allowed to finish decades ago. I stood over it, breathing hard, and quietly said the line every player says at the game's first husk, "Sorry." "Rest now." Sarah looked at me strangely. The Butcher of Meridian apologizing to a corpse was not in her threat models. Then I cracked the sphere and took the first ember in my bare hand, and the world caught fire from the inside. The system found it appropriate to mention only now. Ding! Now you tell me, heat with no direction. Every cell in my body being audited by a star. I was on my knees, then on the floor, and somewhere very far away Sarah was gripping my shoulders and, for the first time in the entire game canon, sounding alarmed. It lasted either 4 minutes or a year. Then the fire found the shape of me, settled into my bones like it was coming home, and went quiet. You may raise or lower the temperature of what you touch. You may snuff flame. You may burn foreign toxins from your blood. Ash remembers you. I sat up, steam rising gently off my coat, and held up one hand. A small tongue of flame danced over my knuckles, tame as a pet. Sarah stared at the fire, then at me, and asked the most reasonable question of her life. "What are you?" "Employer of the Year," I said, and passed out with a smile on my face. I'm told she carried me out. I'm told she threatened a paramedic. The loyalty window, when I woke up, read 74%, and there was a bowl of instant noodles on my nightstand, prepared with the precision of a field-stripped rifle. Cold to the whole world, this woman. Noodles for exactly one person in it. Chapter 8, Day 0. It happened on a Tuesday, at 6:12 in the evening, exactly when I knew it would. Erebos came apart in orbit like a struck bell. Visible in daylight, a red star fracturing into a crown of embers, and 40 minutes later the red tide fell on Meridian City. It looked, at first, like the most beautiful rain in history, crimson, luminous, soft as snow. Then the screaming started. I watched from the Arcology's crown as the city I'd spent 3 weeks quietly abandoning tore itself apart in 1 hour. The grid died district by district, lights going out like something enormous walking across a circuit board. On the avenues, the rain-touched fell, convulsed, and stood back up wrong. Traffic became sculpture. The harbor bridge became a river of headlights that would never move again. Meanwhile, in the Marlowe residence, Celeste Marlowe stood at her window in a gown worth a car, clutching a handbag full of Bray Holdings bonds, watching her family's guards abandon their posts, and thought, for the first time with genuine feeling, Victor bought grain. Victor bought grain. And I chose the man who bought stock. Keep that thought, Celeste. Marinate in it. We're just getting started. Behind me, the arcology hummed. Generators from week 1, water towers from week 2. Floodlights snapped on down 200 stories of renovated fortress, the only living tower on a dying skyline. A lighthouse, or a lure, depending on who was looking. "Open the gates," said the Ash King. "Decon lines up. Dobbs, rosters. Doc, burns and lacerations. Told you about the ratio." "Sarah, stay close to me. Always am," she said, which did more damage to me than the proto-core. They came in dozens, then in thousands. Soaked, bleeding, carrying children and grandmothers and, in one case, an extremely offended cat. The staff ran intake exactly as drilled, because yes, I made 200 construction workers rehearse refugee processing, and yes, they thought I was insane, and no, nobody was laughing now. And at the gates the husks came too. The first wave hit at midnight, 30 rainborn, fresh and fast, drawn to the light. The hired guards, brave men holding guns they'd fired twice at a range, wavered. So the most hated man in Meridian walked out in front of them, alone, rolled up his sleeves, and showed the apocalypse what the villain route looks like when it's played by someone with 4,000 hours. Cinder, Stage 1, is a weak power. Everyone who's read a system story knows Stage 1 is a weak power. But a weak power in the hands of a man who knows every husk's aggro pattern, lunge distance, and recovery frame is a massacre with extra steps. I can raise the temperature of what I touch, so I touch them, palm to skull, palm to spine. Dancing through gaps I'd learned by dying in them, every touch flaring white, every husk dropping mid-lunge. Behind me the guards found their courage, the line held, and the refugees in the decon queue watched the Butcher of Meridian burn like a torch between them and the dark. Somewhere in the middle of it a convoy of army trucks fought its way up the ridge road, a National Guard captain with a jaw like a legal ruling, escorting 600 civilians from the collapsed eastern shelters. She arrived to find the gate open, soup lines running, a field hospital singing at full capacity, and Victor Kane, tyrant designate of the coming age, carrying a sleeping 8-year-old to the intake desk while gently on fire. Irene Cross, 33, combat rating, A+. Fate flag. In the original plot, founds the vanguard, leads the final raid on this exact building, the woman who will one day put a sword through this body's heart, meeting its new tenant over a clipboard. She stared at me for a long, long moment. "I know who you are," she said. "Then you know the gate holds," I said, and handed her a roster sheet. "Your people take the south wing, your soldiers take second watch. Argue with me tomorrow, tonight we work." She argued with me tomorrow, and the day after. She'll be arguing with me for years. But that night, Captain Irene Cross took second watch on the walls of the Ash King's fortress, and the original plot quietly broke a little more. Chapter 9. The Rat Takes the Corridor. Director Roth made his move on day 0+2, exactly on schedule, because rats are punctual when there's only one corridor left. He came with Pharaoh's Hounds, a private military company with a gang's heart. 90 men, real hardware, and a copy of the arcology schematics he'd sold to Bray and kept for himself. His plan was simple, and in fairness, it would have worked on the original Kane. Hit Warehouse 7 on the docks, seize the legendary Kane stockpile the whole underworld had been whispering about, then trade food for the fortress while the city drowned. This is where it turns, Roth thought, riding in the lead truck, already composing his first address as master of the tower. The boy played merchant while I played the long game. Food is the only crown now, and I'm about to take the granary. "Sir, I have read your character wiki. There is a cause of death section. Would you like to hear it?" The hounds breached Warehouse 7 in textbook formation and found, in order, nothing, more nothing, and a single folding chair in the middle of 4 acres of empty concrete, on which I was sitting, eating instant noodles. "You're wondering where it all is," I said, not looking up. 40,000 cubic meters of supplies. Trucks came in for weeks. Nothing ever left. I tapped my temple. Storage fees were killing me, so I found somewhere rent-free. Roth, to his credit, didn't waste time on disbelief. He'd seen the husks. The world had new rules and he adapted fast, which is exactly what made him dangerous for 6 years of the original plot. He simply gestured, and 90 guns came up, and then got very warm. Not hot enough to fire. Hot enough that every barrel in the warehouse began glowing a soft traffic light orange, and every trigger became a promise nobody wanted kept. 90 hardened mercenaries started setting their weapons down on the concrete with the tender care of fathers laying down infants. The barrels, someone choked. He didn't even move. He didn't even touch them. Correction. I had touched the crates they'd all walked past at the entrance. Details. Let the legend breathe. From the rafters, from behind pillars, from the dark that was never actually empty, Sarah and 40 arcology guards stepped into the light. Here's the severance package, I told Roth, standing and brushing off my coat. Your men can sign on at the gate like everyone else. The wall needs hands, and I don't waste trained ones. You, personally, get the classic. I pointed at the door, at the red horizon beyond it. 1 bottle of water, a head start. And my sincere confidence in your talent for survival. You need me, Roth said, and it almost sounded true. You can't run that tower on charity, Kane. In a month they'll eat each other, and you'll need a man who can do what you won't. I know exactly what you'd do with my tower, I said quietly, and for 1 second I let the Ash King all the way into my voice. The version of this man that only one person alive had ever met. On a burning rooftop 10 years from now. I've seen it. Walk. Roth walked. The last anyone saw of the great director Roth, architect of 3 coups and 0 successes, was a silver-templed silhouette shrinking into the red wasteland, clutching a single bottle of water, finally learning what every melon-eating bystander in the old boardroom could have told him for free. 30 years east of the river, 30 years west. Never bully the young chairman into poverty, especially when the young chairman has read your ending. 86 of 90 hounds signed on at the gate by nightfall. Pharaoh himself, a mountain of a man wearing a raid boss's death flag like a hat, looked at the glowing barrels, looked at the burning man, did the smartest math of his career, and took a job as a wall sergeant. Ding! Note: they have started calling you the warden, because nobody wants to say butcher near the soup line. You're welcome. I stood on the crown of my fortress that night. The fortress I died in 900 times. Now full of light and noise and other people's sleeping children. Sarah stood at my shoulder, close enough that our sleeves touched, holding 2 bowls of noodles like ceremonial regalia. Across the dead water, Bray Tower's emergency lights flickered on their last private generators, where Augustus Bray was presumably discovering the exchange rate between $1 trillion in paper and 1 can of beans. For the first time since I clicked yes, I let myself believe the villain route was working. Which is of course when the system chimed. You were the first? You are no longer alone. Across the dead city, on the roof of Bray Tower, a figure stood at the edge, looking at the one glowing tower on the horizon. Looking at it the way you look at a save file that isn't yours. Found you, the figure said, in the cheerful voice of a man reading a strategy guide. Rank 1 on the leaderboard. Master of the game, a pause, a smile you could hear. I always wondered who kept beating my speedrun splits. Ding! Time until day 0. 0. Time survived, 2 days. Days remaining in the game, 3,648.